All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about Filter 3.0. I'll cut in some videos that other people have done with Scott Rao and some of the other people. He actually helped come up with this for the Decent Espresso machine, which this is, of course. And you can see him running the Filter 3 recipe. So if you want to look at the advanced steps to it, pretty interesting approach to coffee. You do 22 grams of coffee in, and then it gives you no bypass brewer within the Decent Espresso machine. And I want to talk about a few of the things that are cool about it and a couple of the reasons why I don't think I'm going to use it after today. I think that I'm coming to see with coffee brewing where consistency is the thing that you're pitching me. If it takes a lot of extra steps to get to that consistency, sometimes it just doesn't overcome the amount of effort that it requires to achieve it, because the difference between it, once you're really good, I'm pretty consistent myself at brewing, obviously not as consistent as this, but I'm pretty good. And so the amount of effort that it takes to get that same level of consistency in this, which means changing the grind setting because you need a very coarse grind setting. Now that's an advantage because you are able to use a coarser grind, which means that if you have a less capable grinder, then you're going to get a more consistent grind from it by using the coarser grind. But it's also a disadvantage because if I want to switch back to pour over, now I'm getting into a situation where I'm switching grind settings. Always a bit of a pain point there. Second is, in my Decent Espresso machine, I use a water that is calibrated so that it doesn't build up scale in my machine, but that's not the best water for my filter coffee. So then I'm mixing a solution to put into the machine as well for the water to get the right flavor out of my pour over coffee. So you can see, like, there's just a few extra steps that cause it to be a little bit more than the amount I'm getting out of it. Again, I think there's just that crossover amount in coffee where it's just like, it's just a little too much. For example, here's another quick example. These Sybaris filters, they're making some fantastic brews, but I'll tell you what, the folding process in them is just a little bit too much for me. I can see why they put them on sale and discontinued them. There's just a little bit more than what you want. Every once in a while it's fun, and these are absolutely, this thing has been fun. So I don't want to discourage someone from getting it if that is what you're looking for. And I think in a cafe, if I was running a Decent Espresso machine as a filter coffee, fantastic. I'd have the water ready to go always in there, and I'd have the grinder dialed for it, and it would work wonderfully as a 1 cup machine. But at home, if that's not what I'm looking for, when I usually use this for espresso, it's just not where I'm at with it. All right, let's make some coffee. Got a WDT over here. Grind out my beans using that coarse setting I mentioned, Zerno. I'm going pretty coarse, much coarser than I would for, actually I went so coarse the other day that I jammed with chunks of the grind, went too far and got some of the chunks in there and had to clean out my grinder, but always a good reason to clean out my grinder. All right, here we go, noise coming. No real reason to wet the paper filter, but I always do. just because I don't want it to come unseated for any reason. Dump your 22 grams in. Level it out a little bit. Now here's another little point of order, I guess. So you lock your porta. You got to kind of, you can either move the drip tray, or if you've got the slow pour supply specific carafe for it, it does fit with your scale just perfectly and is like the perfect size for it. But again, it's very minor. Okay, again, if you're having fun with this, which I am, and I admit that, then it's not a huge deal. But if you're thinking about buying this is a little bit of a strange setup. Like, you either have to move your drip tray. If you do that, turn it long ways, because you're still going to want the water, the overpressure water, to be somewhere to go to drip into, so you don't get water all over your counter. If not, this carafe from Slow Pour Supply, it's a Quinto carafe, fits underneath and is the right amount of liquid out afterwards. So you can get that perfect ratio. You do have to notice, do I have enough water in there? Because obviously it's going to take more water than a pour over. So you need to make sure that your tank is filled up. Trying to think if there's other things to think about. I'm gonna switch up my bean weight, what I'm going for. I usually go 270 on this, and then put in some bypassed water. There's all kinds of recipes on there. You can do more bypass, less bypass. That's an area that you can play with, but you really want the idea to be how quickly the water is draining through. So let's give it a shot. First step is going to be like a quick hit the puck with water. You should see just a few drips coming through as it pre-wets everything. Again, this is sort of your bloom phase, where it's getting a bunch of water into the puck. There you go. So that's the first indicator where you know you've got an amount and a grind size. That's a good indicator for your grind size. Do I have a grind size that's coarse enough? If after the pre-wet phase you're getting no water through there, probably a good indicator that you've ground too finely, and you're going to need to coarsen up your grind, because you are using that bed as a filter, which is great, and that's kind of the idea behind no bypass, is that you're not getting any of the water around the filter. It all goes through the bed of coffee first, then through the filter. So that is a super advantage. But you also want to make sure that there is water getting through, because you're not brewing espresso. It's a little more concentrated maybe, and you can of course adjust with your bypass later, but just something to check out. It's given indicators now about moving on to each step. So you've got some sound indicators as it's brewing. Of course, nice thing with your lunar scale, it's brewing by weight, so you'll get a chance to recognize where it's at based on some of the indicators. We've moved on to step 2. So again, it's doing that slow but constant water flow in there, and it's still reading by weight, going up to my target weight. It is very satisfying to watch the drips come out. I have to say, the more I watch this particular brew, it may be a little bit too fine. Usually I like the drips to come a little bit faster. I think it's still gonna taste really good. And I've got a DI fluid, which will give me the extraction. So I will test it on this too and let you guys know. After, I'll test it once before I do the bypass, and then another time after the bypass is completed as well. So you can see at the top, so there is, I would say there's a good chance that I've, again, too coarse. You can see some of the water coming out around, so it's coming up and around. So because it's not, the water going in again is filling too much. It's filled it to the top, so that's a great indicator for it being too coarse. So I got about, I'll let it keep dripping here. It looks like I'm gonna get about 200. I was shooting for around 270, but that's okay. And again, I've got to fill it up with water here. So I'll let it drain out. I'm gonna test what I do get out of it here, and then I will show you those different readings. All right, got the DI fluid, no liquid on there. The test meter. This thing works pretty neat. And again, the consistency has been solid so far. So it does the 3 tests, and you can see as it's kind of cooling off on there. And then it'll give you a score between the tests that it runs. All right, let's check the extraction percentage. So 17.92 afterwards. Again, pretty delicious brew. All in all, very tasty. This is a Tim Wendelboe coffee. I'm very satisfied with the brew. It's just the other stuff. I would say if you want to try this out, recognize what it is. Maybe you're using your Decent for a while for just pour over, and you just get it dialed in and set up. But if you're trying to do this every morning, for me, it's something that I'm giving up on. I'm gonna show in the next, or the second half of this video, we're gonna get out the pour over basket, which is another thing that I tried with the Decent, and we can talk about that. So this is the Decent pour over basket. So it's got these laser holes in there. I'm on the dog hair, that's typical for here. But you can sort of do the same thing, use the machine for the consistency, which it is, again, more consistent. But I think what I'm gonna find on that one too is something similar, just the consistency that you as a brewer are able to provide is so close that if you're the only one dialing in your coffees, or maybe for one other person, the added consistency that you can get from a machine doesn't necessarily overcome the inconvenience of having to set up a machine that was not designed for this purpose, and kind of mod it. Is it fun? 100%. Again, this is the cool thing about trying these different items out as a hobby. It's absolutely fun to experiment with, to go blind taste test back to back between my brew and it. Fantastic. In fact, I might do one of those just for fun here to see which one I prefer. Okay, so Back, I'm using the UFO dripper, which I've really been enjoying lately. And we're going to brew up a more standard pour. So again, going back to the Decent 3.0, you know, I was thinking about why people have lever espresso machines as opposed to a Decent. I mean, there are a couple reasons why I think it's so cool. That the experimentation is fun for me, and that's where it has the advantage over something. Although recently I've been thinking about switching maybe to a lever machine. The part that I enjoy maybe most about coffee is I'm finding that it may be the process, not just about the flavor that I get out, and making that the most consistent, which would be something that would be very important to me if I owned a cafe and I want to have the person coming in have that same experience, or a dependable experience, or if I'm training or cross-training a lot of different people, I definitely understand why that could be necessary to have the business survive. However, if it's just me there, if it was a small enough cafe, I think I would leave it as just me doing the pour over. I think that there is something to be said about the watching the person make it that is enjoyable. "45-second bloom, 1-to-3 ratio to start. Nothing fancy. Pour to 260 or 160, sorry. 260 is my target weight. Go pretty slow with this brewer. Has a really nice flow. I found that I get balanced cups with it. You know, I still think you can't go wrong with a V60. I haven't talked in depth about this. I think that I've had some really juicy, somehow it's changed the juiciness of the brews, but I'm not sure that if I'm striking out for that best brew, that this is the one that I would pick. Nice and easy, simple recipe. Again, get that consistent drawdown. Do a little bit of a swirl here after it draws down a bit, and we'll check back and see how it compares. All right, let's try this out. This is the UFO brew. Let it cool down for a few minutes. Let's see what we get. All right, 1.6. So we'll compare that to our other extractions, and I'll taste them both side by side, see which one I like better. All right, we've got both the two brews side by side. This is the UFO. This is the Filter 3.0. Not gonna do a blind test, but I wanted to taste them side by side. Always a fun experiment to do. There's a nice juiciness, a bright acidity to that. Tastes like a Wendelbo coffee, something I really enjoy. Finish is really nice. It's got a strawberry note to it. I definitely get that on there. Let's try the Filter 3.0. That's really nice as well. It honestly is a little bit more balanced than this. So the acidity is more upfront in this one, and that tastes a little more balanced. I still get the juiciness, but don't have the kind of initial sharpness. Now, I like that sometimes, but I can see where some people would prefer this brew just out of the overall roundness. Still both have a lot of clarity. And I think this comes down to what you prefer. Again, it is such a fun experiment to have been able to do this. I just think that this piece of kit is more suited for someone who's going to use this as a dedicated brewer. If I had a cafe and couldn't train my baristas to do pour over, or we didn't have enough time because of staffing, I think this could be such a cool idea for 1 cup of coffee at a time. For the amount that I'm gonna do, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. Even in this experiment, I changed my grinder setting, and that caused some issues with my grinder. And while I've got 2, I use my Decent for espresso, and I don't have a need to not use my pour over setup for pour over. And I guess if you just prefer pour over and want that consistency and you dial it in, I think it's a really cool way to do it. If you are an experimenter and changing coffees a lot, I don't know if it's the way to go, but I hope you guys enjoyed looking at this and certainly enjoyed making it.